My personal philosophy?
Yeah, personal.
None of this exists. I am absolutely confident that AI is not going away. It's very easy to love someone or something who is lovable. That's not a challenge at all. The problem with love is that you've got people there who are eminently unlovable.
Hey Brian, thank you for having me back.
Great to be back.
I really enjoy interviewing you, you know.
It was got a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I enjoyed it.
We got some good comments last time. Now we talked about a box last time, what was inside the box, and I thought your answer was really, really good. It was just out of the box, right?
Well, you asked me to think about that, and that just seemed so natural and correct.
Yeah, and I believe that, and I like the way that you thought about it. And so what I'm going to do is today we're going to do something a little different. Is that okay?
Okay.
It's not going to involve any props.
Sure.
I'm going to administer a very quick personality test.
All right.
Now, this is a personality test that you can take with a grain of salt, so it's not official. It's just something that we do for a bit of fun.
Okay.
However, what it does is it really just gives us an insight into how you answer and what you might be thinking and feeling. How do you feel about that?
Interested.
Okay. So the first question I'm going to ask you, if you were on a beach, okay, so imagine a beach for a moment. If you're on a beach and you could have anything on that beach, what would you pick?
If I could have anything on that beach. I take it I'm on holiday at the time, or just any old beach?
And it's just any beach that you picture right now.
What would I have with me?
What would you have, yeah. What would you carry with you?
Carry with me?
Yeah, to the beach.
I think I carry a surfboard.
Tell me more about that.
When I was a boy, I was a surf lifesaver. But we had a poor life. We were struggling to put food on the table. And so we could never afford a surfboard for number one boy. So you know the polystyrene bodyboards that break up when the wave hits them? I had that. And so I really, really wanted to have a surfboard. So I couldn't afford one. So I spent my time body surfing, which is great, a lot of fun. I mean, that was immense fun. Learned an awful lot about the water and how not to drown. But now that I can afford a surfboard, I would like to get on that board and learn how to surf properly.
Oh, lovely. That's an excellent answer. Okay, so that's question one. There's only 3 questions. Question 2, you're in a desert and you see a cube.
A cube?
A cube. There's a big cube in the desert. And there's also a horse standing next to the cube. What would be the first thing that you would do?
I'd walk up to the horse and pat it.
Okay, tell me about that. Why did you make that choice?
I love animals.
Okay, cool.
The last animal I came in, well, many animals, but the last time I came across a horse was actually in Nimbin. And there was some mounted police there. And of course, they were protecting people from the dangerous drug of cannabis. And so there they were. We had this kind of welcome to the town from the police and just welcoming the police saying, we're going to be friendly with you, you be friendly with us. And these beautiful horses were there. And so I said, listen, may I actually stroke your horse? And these very stern police on the horse said, okay, and you come, you might be okay, he's a member of parliament, okay. So I went up and I had the beautiful time and the horses just nuzzled up as I talked. And you could see this kind of tension dissipating. The police, he is actually one of the enemy, if you like, the supporters of freeing cannabis, legalizing cannabis, with this beautiful horse, which is going to, do a great job on the streets. So they do fantastic work, but just nuzzling into the gentle administrations of just one person. And I love animals like that. And whenever I'm on a farm, there's animals there, I'll be with them.
Oh, that's just a lovely story. It's a lovely story. Are you ready for question number 3?
Okay.
Question number 3. You're in a room. There's a bed with white sheets. What would be the first thing you would do?
A room, bed with white sheets. I've just come in from a long journey into a hotel, I'd imagine. I would lay myself in the bed and just feel those nice cool sheets before I get out for the day.
Excellent. Well done. So would you like your answers? Would the audience like the answers?
Let's hear it.
Okay. So the first one, you chose a surfboard, yeah? What that means in my test, my little test there, is that you're quite adventurous, although you need the means to explore that adventure. So it's an important part of you, being adventurous and connecting. And you also connect with nature really well because you chose the ocean to go out into the water, which has some dangers in it as well. So you're not afraid of danger and a challenge, right? That would be how I would see one. How's that?
Pretty true for me, actually.
Yeah, cool. Now, number 2 is interesting because you didn't say anything about the cube. Now, the cube represents the establishment, usually. Make sense?
Yeah.
So you've got a desert. And the desert often represents possibilities. It can be dry, it can be hot. Cube's the establishment, although you chose the horse. Now, that shows me, of course, clearly to our audience, Brian is a great animal lover. Although your story was very, very interesting because you were talking about the juxtaposition between patting the horse, the police, and what you were doing at the time. That was a really nice introduction into your heart. Now, number 3 is an interesting one because it can be anything. Number 3 really, believe it or not, it's actually about death and dying.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? However, what that shows me is that you're full of life, but you just need a rest sometimes. How's that sound?
That sounds pretty actually spot on for me. This is from my understanding of who I feel I am.
Yeah, and that's just just a bit of an insight into Brian and how he might see the world. So I told you this would be interesting, right? Now, the next thing I want to ask about is quite topical because it affects us, me as a behaviorist, although it's affecting a lot of the people that I connect with. I'd like to ask you what you feel about the advent of AI, artificial intelligence.
2 emotions, excitement and trepidation.
Okay.
I have been a fan of AI ever since I learned about science fiction. And I am absolutely confident that AI is not going away. It needs to be mastered, it needs to be controlled, and we will need to learn to work with it. As, for example, now the schools realizing they can't defeat AI, we must now teach the students how to exist with it, which is fine, I think. I mean, can you imagine the time, I remember the time when I was in school, we didn't have any calculators because we had to do all the maths in your head.
That's right.
You've got a machine there which can do the calculation. You need to know how to use that to get the answers. Same thing for AI. If I've got an examination on, say, history, do I need to know the exact date of this particular battle? Or is it more important for me to put into context the social structures around the reason for that battle being needed in the first place, which is the intelligence aspect of the human? So the AI can very well help us in collating information, gathering information, putting it into context. We need to use that. On the other hand, I just saw that lovely film, that Mission Impossible film, number 7. The whole theme of that was of a sentient AI gone rogue. And what really inspires fear is that all of the governments, every single one, wants to have that alone to control. This is Pinky in the Brain, that cartoon. I want to rule the world. Wow. Where everything that we do can be measured by AI, controlled by AI. I don't want any part of that. So what we need to do with AI is recognize it's here, it's going to stay, it's going to get more and more competent. And we need to be very aware that there's bad actors out there who will try to use that to harm us, to further their own power, money, this kind of thing, the usual things which motivate bad human behavior. And we need to take that and make it serve, if you like, the human aspirations of one of my dreams, discovering if we had AI really working well, could it perhaps give us a solution to getting faster than speed of light travel? So that's my personal dream. Can we do that to then go out and explore the universe?
Oh, that's lovely. I'm going to ask you a bit more of a political question now. Is that okay?
Yeah, go for it.
If you were elected, let's say you were the Prime Minister of this country, just for a moment, just imagine that. How would you implement policy around AI? I mean, what would you do with that? Because we know that a lot of hackers are now using AI to emulate voices, faces, things like that. But at the same time, a lot of people, as you said, it's a really good tool. What kind of policies do you think that you might bring in if you were the Prime Minister of this country?
One of our major enemies, one of our huge problems to overcome is the consequence of having the internet, including AI, where misinformation and disinformation now rules our life. There's nothing that we can see online which we can absolutely certainly know is true. So the question here, we're all swimming in this sea of, I believe this to be true, but is it true? So we can be led in many different directions, and we're going to find ourselves being led by bad actors into a wrong understanding of what's going on because they've manipulated, or AI has manipulated what's going on. So nothing that you see or hear today can be taken as true. That is perilous.
Very much so.
So as a Prime Minister of the country, I would recognize that all of our current avenues for exploring what needs to be done, for the legislation we need to create, how to serve the people, all of that needs to be reassessed. So I think what I would probably be doing is getting AI, the highest level of AI, to look at the problem and offer up solutions that we at Cabinet could then discuss what's the best way of approaching that. So I would use AI to defeat AI.
That's awesome. Well done. Even I didn't think about that one. Well done. So my next question is, what's your favourite movie?
The Life of Brian. I didn't have to think about that at all. It's not the name. Do you know, it's 1979 that came out, a long time ago. Yeah. The humour is immaculate, but it's more relevant today than ever it was. And so the truths they've brought out, the way they've used humour to elucidate the problems and really skewer the hypocrisy, that is relevant today. I love that film.
That's amazing. And The Life of Brian is an incredible film. We've got to admit that. So if you were Brian, what would you do?
If I was Brian, what would I do? Being mistaken for who I'm not. Okay? And looking at all the people there, that lovely one where they're following, one's got the gourd and one's got the sandal, okay? Follow the gourd, follow the sandal, the hypocrisy of I know what God meant. I think what I would be doing is saying, guys, chill. Okay? Everyone's got to find their own way in life, okay? And just following one ideal as the only ideal is so wrong. So every opinion you've got there, every belief you've got about who we are, why we're here, that for you is valid. Go for it, as long as you hurt no one else.
Absolutely. And we know that reality in a way is constructed. Our latest neuroscience is saying there's a very thin line there. So how do you look on the bright side of life? How do you do that?
My personal philosophy?
Yeah, personal.
None of this exists. I have a scientific approach.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So let's look at, say, a 4x2, and you smack someone's head with that. It's going to hurt. Okay? When you look at that material, that 4x2, the molecules which make it up, most of it is empty space. I mean, it's only 0.0001% matter anyhow. So how can something which is mostly absent of matter, connecting with my head, which is mostly absent of matter, in some cases more than others, how come it hurts? And you look at the structure of the molecule. Did you know, for example, that of the 8 billion people on this earth, if you took all the empty space out of all the atoms and molecules of those 8 billion bodies, we'd fit into something about the size of a large cube of sugar.
Wow.
8 billion of us. Take one single carbon atom, one carbon atom of that 8 billion people, and recognize it came from a star. Look at the protons and neutrons, break those down into the subatomic fractions, the muons, gluons, quarks, bosons. Okay, break those down into the baryons. Okay, break that down, and what do you get? An electromagnetic wave, which when you observe it is actually solid. If you don't observe it, it's actually an electromagnetic wave. What speed is that wave traveling at? Speed of light. So you look at that. If that is our fundamental structure, who are we? What is this life? So when I'm talking to people who are dying, who have this ability to look at this with a bit of a detached view, tell me, who are you really? Because we now know that you are energy. You are a distortion of the space-time continuum. You cannot make energy. You cannot destroy energy. All you can do is transform energy. So in this life, when you transition into death, as we're transforming into another wave, another state of being, who are you? And also then comes the question, why are you?
Okay. 2 fundamental questions. So who are you, Brian? Who are you? For our audience, who are you, really?
Someone who thinks deeply, cares passionately about this beautiful creation, and wants to ensure that other beings in this world can enjoy the beauty. That's who I am.
Absolutely. And you know, I'm just curious. We talked about the box last time. We looked inside the box. And if you were to look at this Earth from space, you know how you see those pictures and you see the Earth, that brilliant blue marble.
Yeah.
And you were standing there, let's say you're on the moon right now. What do you think would be the most important thing if you're looking at the Earth to do as a human race, as people on this planet? Right now.
We have a beautiful world that is being raped and abused for personal gain to the detriment of the majority. And we have individuals, all of us maybe, who are going to make choices which impact others negatively. Yeah. It's always going to happen. We're not going to be understanding each other one-on-one. I spoke earlier about us being actually a distortion of the space-time continuum. We are this electromagnetic wave. The vibrations that we feel are in fact a reflection of our true nature of being vibrational. What is that underlying energy? And I would describe that with one word: love. Now, if we were to recognize the essential energy of our being, of all nature, even the rocks there have an energy to them. If we were to actually look at that and see this can be manifested purely as love, let us be loving and kind with everyone on this earth and live in harmony. Our world would be a paradise.
Absolutely. And just to further that question, what you just said there, how do you really understand love? If you were to love someone or something completely, as best you can, what would it look like, feel like? What would you experience? What would be really important to you about that experience of love? What would that be like for you?
It's very easy to love someone or something who is lovable. That's not a challenge at all. The problem with love is that you've got people there who are eminently unlovable. Now, how would you then manifest love for something or someone who is unlovable? It doesn't mean you like an action, it doesn't mean you support an action, but the person who is there, that energy that is there, we need to understand that there's more behind that than simply the actions we see or the words that we hear. That understand that that person who is being unkind, unjust, unfair, aggressive, or violent, a child abuser, a murderer, that person is coming from a place of pain. They weren't born that way. They've developed that way. Why? So while we're going to give them, for example, the just punishment of whatever form, we need to do that not with malice in our hearts, with understanding, with forgiveness, with love, but not allowing that to continue.
Absolutely. And I'm really interested taking that concept for a minute, perhaps that person. How do we prevent that person becoming the final product that you talked about?
Oh, that is a very important question. We're going through that question just now politically with how do you manage the juvenile crime we've got here and the horrible instances of rampant criminality. And then you look back to see what they've been through. And someone asked me, when would you treat this person who's now, say, in Banksia Hill detention, for example? And my answer was quite simple. You need to start treatment before they're born. Because that's the only way we've got of preventing them turning out at age 13 or 15 having done immensely horrible things. It's not because they're fundamentally bad. You need to start before they're born. There's a lovely famous, this is mentioned by someone called Abdul Baha back in, it must be in the late 19th century, talking about education, female education in the Middle East, for example, non-existent. So he put forward the idea of equal education for all. If you have a choice, it has to be the female first. Radical for those times, even today. So the question was posed to him, Abdul Baha, when do we start teaching our young girls? And the answer, you might be surprised, with the grandmother. With the grandmother. So we need to go back to the fundamentals and before the fundamentals to start that process. And it's going to be generations before we get that. So it's an ongoing journey, if you like. Will it be achieved? The current world, I find that impossible to think of. I'd like to think it's happening. So what we're needing, I would think, is something cataclysmic, which is going to force people to change their minds. So I don't see an easy way into this, because humanity the way it is, there's such a lot of negativity going on that one person fixing this, not a chance. A religion fixing this, no way. The religions cause more problems than they're given answers. It has to be something which is going to force people to reconsider their attitudes. If we carry on, not only are you going to die, but I'm going to die. And that's what's going to make people to say, I need to make a change.
That's right. And interesting enough, as an intimate partner profiler and specialist in relationships and dating, we talk about epigenetics. So I think for our audience, that's what Brian's talking about, that 3 generations at least of information that's encoded into us from our ancestors. And then we have information encoded genetically, then we have information modeled to us by our significant others.
Indeed.
And we're a sponge when we're between 0 and 3, literally. We're absorbing all that, creating our first identity. So tell me a little bit more about what kind of structure would we need, and I'm going to ask you as a politician now, what kind of structure would we need to kind of reform or look at things a little bit differently, as you're talking about? Do you have any ideas about that?
We'd have to get people together who actually listen rather than putting their points of view forward first.
Okay.
We need to change the structure in Parliament. This oppositional across the table there shouting at each other has to stop. It cannot continue, and society cannot flourish as long as that's happening. We need to be working together collaboratively, not just in Parliament, but throughout society. We need to be having first and foremost the idea, not how much money can I make, but how may I serve? And that spirit of service has to be front and center of everything that we do, rather than actually my personal profit or my company profit to the exclusion of everybody else. We're going to, this idea that our current economics of we're going to exploit the world to get more profit here, benefits for our shareholders, and if the world's going to suffer, well, someone will fix that somewhere else. Not my problem. That has to stop. So we need to transform how we as a society accept the norms of today. We need new thinking. The status quo has to be completely broken. We need to create a new status quo and keep modifying that status quo as we develop. Because doing what we did yesterday, expecting a different answer, that's madness. We need to be innovative. We need to be thinking new things. We need to be supportive. We need to be collaborative. And we need to be working with a purpose which is not about me first. It's about how are we going to thrive. And that's when you're standing on the moon, looking at the Earth, realizing that we're all in the same beautiful planet. Anyone hurting that planet is going to hurt all of us. That's
right. And given that all fundamental unpleasant behavior actually comes from a base of fear, and there's fear of loss, fear of whatever, how, as a person, how in your life have you made changes so that you can begin to live the things that you talk about? Because I know you do, because I know you personally. I'd like the audience to know what you've done to start to live this life, walk this walk, make these steps towards this future that you talk about for the planet.
My personal approach, you can't have the approach I have got when you're 15. You need experience in life. You need to experience all the highs and the lows. And I've experienced many highs and many lows. But I think the fundamental question, the fundamental beginning of this is the ability to ask the question, why? I think the question why is one of the most fundamental questions that we have, and that we need to not be content. We need to actually be questioning, inquiring, curious. I wonder what happens. What will happen if? Where do we go with this? Why would we want to go there? Why is the sky blue? Every child asks that question. It's an important question. I see something, I don't understand it. Why? As of now, what we're saying now is, this is the way things always are. Don't question it. That stifles everything.
It does.
So the question why, and I remember many years ago, the reason I changed my trajectory from the ordinary medical practitioner into the alternative person that I am now started back in 1982. I was leaving my clinic in Germany, and I was in tears. I had worked hard that day. I had many good diagnoses. I'm good at diagnostics, okay? And I thought hard about every single diagnosis I'd made in my clinic that day and realized for not one single diagnosis did I have an underlying cause. Not one. You've got diabetes type 2. Why? Oh, it's a relative or absolute lack of insulin. Okay, it's a relative lack of insulin, so they've got actually increased insulin. Why? Oh, peripheral tissue resistance. Why? And then you ask why again. So why is it my patient can reduce their diet, take the medication, and still the diabetes gets worse? Why? And that rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune disease, against what? We're just suppressing the immune system. Why? So I left my clinic in tears because I said to myself, I've saved more people as a surf lifesaver at City Beach than I have as a doctor. All of my medical training has been useless. I make diagnoses and treat people on the slow process towards death. I'm not giving them life. Why? Once you ask that question, why, you are obligated, I think, to search. What are the other options we've got there? And that began that long journey towards where I'm at now. And it's a journey that's ongoing. It never stops, because if you then say, I have found the truth, how do you know, if you haven't lifted every stone to look under, that you're still with the truth? It's an ongoing journey.
How do you determine the truth?
I'm not certain about that. I really am not certain. What's true for me may not be true for you.
Exactly. So how do we get people to be on the same page, even if something's painful over here, or something's pleasurable over here? Everything is a cost-benefit analysis in life, or a transaction, as much as I hate to say it. So how do you do that? How do you get those people on that same page? And this is my last question for the day. How have you done that in the past? Tell us a story about how you've got people to see the world in a way that's been beneficial for them now.
Okay, so people come in to me as a doctor, not as a politician, and say, I have got a problem. I have got a problem with, say, stresses at work, or my employers are being mean to me, and I've got PTSD and I can't cope anymore, and I want to kill myself. So I tell them a story. Okay? It's not about the situation that's caused, it's by how I respond to it. The situation is one thing, but the responses can be very varied. For example, let's assume you've got a tax bill for $100,000 payable now. Horrible, isn't it? Yeah. Look, the robo-debt thing, there are people there with these improper requests, okay, who killed themselves because $5,000 demanded by Centrelink improperly. The whole thing was abysmal, and they were bullied, if you like, into committing suicide. It's one response to it. But consider this. If you have $100,000 debt to the tax office, it also means you earned enough to need to pay $100,000. Isn't that wonderful? I had the opportunity